Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Keep Learning as a Teacher. As always, I'm Teacher Mauricio, and I'm here with Teacher Christopher, your teachers in trust. Today, as the topic of our podcast, we will be interviewing two great teachers that will be helping us to answer the question regarding how to properly make and apply a test. An interesting topic which many of you have requested. So, we welcome Teacher Carolina and Teacher Juan. We thank you for your time, and if you don't mind, we would like to start with the first question. You please give us a background of your academic history so the listeners can know you.
So I'm a former student from the English language teaching. I do have my bachelor now, and I teach in a secondary school.
Well, a little bit for you to know me a little bit more of my background is that I just finished the English language teaching degree not longer ago. In my process, I work in a high school called Wabik as an English teacher. I as well work in a primary school as my social service, teaching children, right, as an English language teacher. And currently I'm working at the coordination of Telebachillerato and as well working as a teacher in an academy, right? But my work in Telebachillerato is lesson planning, creation of material. I'm the coordinator of English of the whole high school. So I need to be creating and thinking of what is the best for the students.
When designing an exam, what do you take into consideration? For example, the number of students, subjects, the time limit, other factors.
Well, when I'm designing a test, exam, I need to think about what I'm grading, right? If I'm grading a subject, if I'm grading just English, grammar, any skills, as well I need to think about the amount of students because depending on this amount of students is the type of question that I will use, as well as their level, right? Because I cannot use some certain vocabulary depending on the level of my students, right? As well the context of my students because I won't use some words that they might not know, like something that they haven't met yet. So the amount of the students, the subject, level, time, the context, the classroom, etc. So it's a lot of things that I have to take into consideration when creating an test.
When designing an exam, I do take into consideration the time that I have that day. I usually want them to have the most time as possible. So the days that we have two classes, one after the other, are the days that I usually put exams. I take into consideration the subjects that we have seen the 2 weeks or 3 weeks previous the exam. I ask them to review specific subjects so they can ask me any questions if they want to practice, so we can review all of that.
What do you think is the ideal time to take an exam?
Time to take an exam, I believe that is every month. So the subjects that you have seen, they don't just go away or they are going to be forgotten. They are going to forget about them, and they are not going to be as big as the final exam that they have per semester. I believe that I usually review with them previous the exam if they have any questions, and then we have the exam.
Following question, I think that there's a great debate about the time that is like suitable or perfect for the students to take a quiz, an exam. Is because we cannot give them little time, and we cannot give them a lot of time as well, because if we give them like a very short time, they will get stressed because they will feel in a rush of finishing, right? And as well, if we give them a lot of time, people that finish it first will be stressing the others one that haven't finished, as well as they will get bored, or they might not feel the necessity of finish what they are doing, right? So for me, it will depend on the amount of items that we have created, and as well the things that we are grading. Like for example, if we have a whole session of just grammar, well, it will be not necessary to have like an hour, right? But if we are grading like the 4 skills and as well use of grammar, so it will depend. But I will say that around 40 minutes is like the time that we use when presenting the exam.
All right, that's great. What are the types of items that you usually use the most in preparing an exam? Or what are the most recommendable ones that you use?
Well, as you know, and as we all know, there's a lot of types of questions, a lot of different ways of create a question, right? So personally, I'm thinking about my time, right? Because if I have a lot of students, I won't use an open-ended questions because it will take me a lot of time. It will be time consuming to grade all of those answers that are like open, and depending on what they wrote is like the grade that I will give them. So personally, I choose the multiple option item because it's easier for me to grade, because you have just your key and you just like grade the exams. It's like the favorite for me, but I will say that there are other different type of questions that are better depending on what we're grading.
I like to have multiple option questions, like in between 5 and 10 open questions, but that depends on the topic that we are looking at that time. And I do like to put 3 or 4 tricky ones, so they can put all the knowledge that we have seen in classroom in that question, so I do know that they paid attention that day, because those are the ones that I usually say, pay attention to this is important, because you can get confused, and that's the kind of questions, the tricky ones, that I put in between the different sections that I do in exams.
What items do you consider to be the most ideal for evaluating each of the skills? You know, listening, reading, writing, and grammar as well.
For listening, I believe that it can be the first part of like a multiple option question, and the second one with a different audio or the continuation of the same audio. And you can put open question so they can made up their own answer. Those are the kind of questions that they can have more than one answer. For reading, I prefer to put specific questions for each paragraph. For writing, I do like asking them to write about a topic that they like. For example, their favorite video game, their favorite movie, a moment that they like that day, a moment that they dislike that day. But I put them that I want a specific grammar or vocabulary in that writing, so they can be free to put those items on their writing. And for grammar is the same. I believe that I can evaluate both writing and grammar at the same time in the same exercise.
Okay, the items that I take into consideration when creating an exam or a test of skills, personally, it will depend on what I'm actually grading, right? What I mean when I'm saying this is that if I'm grading listening, what listening am I grading, right? If I'm grading listening for specific details or for general understanding, it will depend the question that I will use, okay? Because for example, if I'm grading a specific detail, I will use like fill the gaps with the word that I just heard. But if I'm grading for general understanding, maybe opening the question of what do you understand or what the speaker tried to say, or maybe some questions about rephrasing what you understood. So the item that I will use, it will depend on specifically the type of skill or the sub skill, micro skill, I will say, that I'm grading, right? So I have to take into consideration that, but also gut feeling, open-ended questions, and multiple choice as well. It never fails.
Alright, those are some great answers. Now, regarding these items that you've mentioned, what are the advantages and as well as the disadvantages of using these different types of items?
Advantages and disadvantages of using different types on the same paper. I will say that it will be time consuming for the students to think about how I'm answering this, okay? If they are not used to the type of question that you're using, they will take longer and you will have higher possibilities of they getting that question wrong, okay? So before we have to present them the type of questions that we are using, like train them using it in homework, something like that. And as well, it will be time consuming for us as teachers when the time of grading arrives, because we have to be changing on our answer key, or maybe if we have a lot of type of questions, the students may have get a little bit crazy answering because of the changes suddenly about gut feeling and choosing the correct answer, etc. So I will say that is worth it to use different type of questions, because each type of question will grade differently or will work differently. But for us as teacher and as well for the students, it will be a little bit confusing at the end, okay? So it is worth it, but it is a little bit complicated to get it right.
I think that any type of item works for any group.
I don't think that every type of item works for any group. I believe that there are specific ones that are going to fail, not because the item is bad, but because the group is not that associated, or they are going to like that item. What I'm referring to is that if you have seen that in a test they failed because they got confused, or maybe there was a misunderstanding in the item, you should change it, or you could ask them what they understood, so you can have their perspective, so you can be a better teacher in that way.
I will say that every type of questions work for every group, but if we train them before, okay? If we tell them, if we have used that type of questions before, they will get it, right? And as well, it is a long process, but it is worth it. And as well, as I said, I think that every type of questions work for every group, but there's might be some students that may not get some type of questions. For example, personally, in my opinion, in my experience, the rephrasing question or the rephrasing item is very complicated for me because I don't get the conjugations of something. I know the grammar, I know how to use it, but when you put me like the whole sentence and you ask me for to rephrasing it, it is very complicated for me. So that might not be the best type of question for me, but it might be for the 90% of my group. So I will depend on the amount, and it is not easy to get all the questions better for each of your students, right? If we have a large group, it will be complicated to get all the questions perfect for the best fit for your group.
All right, now we will hear our commercials about our patrons. Please keep with us, and we will see you in just a few seconds.
Fieldstone is founded on a strong and positive belief in children. We know that students are happy, confident, and engaged when they're challenged. That is why the Fieldstone School is
A Cambridge school.
We are a member of the Cambridge School's Leadership for Learning community.
An institution for academic excellence.
Our curriculum gives students a solid foundation to achieve a high level of academic and personal development.
Nurturing.
Fieldstone provides a world-class academic program in the context of a small, caring, and nurturing learning community.
A community.
Our 6.4-acre facility gives our small school community a big school feel.
Teacher-centered.
We have a teacher-student ratio of 1 to 15, ensuring that all of our students get what they need from our program. Fieldstone. We see not the child we meet here, but rather whom that child will become.
When language learning gets hard,
make it fun.
When your head is exploding, your confidence eroding, when life becomes a strain on your body and your brain, there's a trick to keep on learning.
Make it fun.
When you make a small mistake and you really need a break, no secret or liquor will get you there quicker. Language learning is hard, so we made it fun.
Download Duolingo.
Thank you for your answer. Now, in relation to these items, is there any item that you would never use in an exam? This is like a must not use, whatever.
Okay, a type of question that I will never use, I will say, or well, again, it will depend on the level of my group, because if I teach, I don't know, B2 plus, well, I will get to use a lot of type of questions because they need to be challenged when they are answering the questions, okay? But personally, because I'm a little bit lazy, I don't like to use open-ended question. I use it when it's necessary, but I don't like it because it takes a lot of time. And as well, it takes me a lot of time reading it and grading, because I'm checking every punctuation, even when I'm not teaching something about punctuation, because it's something that has to be with their first language, but I take it into consideration that. So I will say that an open-ended question is something that I preferably don't use in my exams.
There's something you should never do when designing an exam.
I believe that something that you should never do when designing an exam is that if you don't take into consideration how much time does it cost to answer all the exam. Because for you it can be easy, but for the students that are learning the language, it could be as hard, or it can take longer than you expected. So be considerate to the time, and there shouldn't be a lot of questions, a lot of items, so they get overwhelmed. Usually I don't do more than 2 pages, and I believe that have worked, but obviously it's up to anyone.
Yeah, some things that you should never do when designing an exam as a teacher. Something is that you should take into consideration the level of our students, because sometimes we as teachers, we have a higher level, we used to talk and write differently in a very complicated way. So sometimes we tend to use, grammar and words that are C1, B2 plus, and our students are A1, A2. So they tend to get confused with instructions. So avoid use different or more complicated words or grammar, and stick to the level of our students. As well, use items that they are used to it, okay? Because sometimes we decide to use an item and the students have never used it before, so they will get confused on how is this done or how I answer this. So it will be time consuming. In between they figure out how to answer that. So there are 2 things that we should never do when designing a test. There are other things, but I think that those 2 are the most important.
Now that you've mentioned the items, what about, for example, when you apply a test to your students, what is your usual method? Like, for example, I'm going to have them get into lines, and then we're going to have a specific amount of time to do the test, or things like that. What do you do?
I guess that this question of the method when we apply a test is because when we hear test, when we hear test, we usually think about a paper with a lot of questions written. But a test is not just that. It can be a game. It can be just a talk. Okay, we can be grading our students in different ways, but not by just writing an answer. So yes, I've used different methods like a game. For example, with children, I use Hot Potato to grade or to test vocabulary. It's a game, but at the end I'm testing and evaluating the vocabulary that they have, because they need to answer fast, okay? So yes, there is different methods that you can use: games, pop quizzes, a talk. So depend as well on the skills or what you're grading. You can use different methods and different types of tests of evaluation material.
When applying an exam, my usual method is that I check the subjects that we have seen, and I check the book so I can look what are the exercises that work better for them and the ones that they have a hard time dealing with. So I can do half of the exam, the ones that the exercise that they liked and the exercises that they were not having a great time. So I can see if they have improved, or if they can if they have to review a subject or a specific exercise, so we can see and we can review that when we check the exam.
Have you ever made and applied a test to your students in a non-conventional way? For example, maybe it could be an activity or a game. Or if that is not the case for you, have you heard of any of these types?
Well, I think that I already answered that question of an unusual method, but it's because it's unusual because we are not used to use those kind of methods, right? And also complementing the question before, yes, my usual method is paper and pencil, because it's what the school asked for, okay? And I can tell my teachers to do something that they are not used to, okay? So my usual, yes, is the paper with a lot of questions, okay? But I would like to use other type of unconventional that I already say that is unconventional because we are not used to it. But yes, games and different type of fun activities that can help us to grade of students in a way of a test, because we have a rubric or something that we can fill up later when we're grading, okay? So yes, I have used unconventional methods to grade my students.
Do you like have contest games at the end of the activities, or every second week, so we can review what we have seen? Those are the tests that I like the most because they are fun and they are having a good time and they learn better when they are having fun. And I usually do like this rally, or I do like a Jeopardy. Jeopardy usually are the ones that they are attracted the most. But I have seen that they also like doing like this team versus team. What I mean is that I say to them, you have to do to the team B. Team A do to team B a question about this topic, and they elaborate their own question, their own answer. They have like 5 minutes, so they can trick the other team with their own questions. Of course, if they are wrong at doing the question or the answer or whatever, I do correct them, and we do a lot of points and rewards, and that works.
We appreciate every answer you provided to us. It was really interesting to learn more about the process of making and applying exams, as it would be useful for all the teachers who had struggled with the situation or even for improving. Once again, we thank our guests for this opportunity and you for allowing us to be with you this afternoon. We were Mauricio and Christopher, and as always, keep learning.